Hey folks, welcome back to Three's In. I thought of a story I wanted to share with you about an F-105 pilot transiting Guam one night and began to wonder a little bit about the authenticity of the story. So I called my friend Sam, who also flew Thuds, to ask him if he had ever heard of the incident. Well, it turns out he had, and but he said he wasn't sure whether it was a real time event or an urban legend. So many urban legends come out of the Vietnam War, as they do all wars. But anyway, I'll tell you that story in a minute. As I was talking to Sam, he shared another story that is a first-hand story about an experience he had ferrying an F-105. Only he was coming from the States over to Guam, and then on, I think he was going to Yokota. But when he left McClellan, he had a utility hydraulic pressure problem, and ended up landing at Hickam for them to repair it. And then when he took off out of Hickam, the problem manifested itself again, so he had to return back to Hickam and have the aircraft repaired. While he was there, he met the tanker pilot, a guy named Dorsey, he told me, and that would be escorting him to Guam. And so they kind of struck up a conversation and whatnot. And next day they were on their way. Well, true to form, the hydraulic problem he had, they would get one line fixed, and then the thing would show up in another part of the aircraft. And that's what happened on the way to Guam. Only when it failed this time, it failed up in the nose wheel well, and hydraulic fluid trashed the electronics and a bunch of other stuff, be that as it may. At any rate, he and this Dorsey had talked about doing a formation approach to a pitch up for a landing once they got to Guam. So when they got to Guam, Sam was on the tanker's wing, and they came down the runway, and the tanker peeled off and pulled up, and then Sam pulled up and came around and landed. Well, Sam taxied over to the transit area and parked while the tanker recovered at the SAC aircraft recovery area. So Sam gets out of the jet and he heads over to the tanker guy to thank him for dragging him out to Guam, only to find some SAC general just chewing this tanker pilot's ass. I mean, he's just up one side and down the other. So Sam walks over and says, "Is there a problem here?" And I don't know what grade Sam was at the time, maybe a captain, conceivably a major, but I think more than likely a captain. And the general wasn't having too much of anything. And so Sam says, "You know, sir," he says, "you really ought to recognize how courageous this tanker pilot was." He says, "I didn't have anything for navigation. I didn't have anything for, I didn't have landing gear." He said, "I had to blow it down." He said, "I didn't have a speed brake." He said, "A bunch of electrical equipment had gone out." And he said, "This guy's a real hero for dragging me in and ensuring that I landed safely." And he said he could just see the demeanor in this general's face change at the time. At any rate, the way that ended up, when they got up base, the tanker pilot got the VIP quarters, and Sam had ended up in the barracks. He said he wasn't so sure he tried to sell it that hard. At any rate, the story I asked Sam about was one I'd heard, I imagine since the late 60s, where a Thud pilot, a 105 pilot, had come into Guam one night, and he was in the bar having a beer or two when a SAC crew came in, a B-52 crew. And this colonel, who had been flying the bomber, walked in the bar and said, "Clear the bar for the combat troops." Well, that didn't go over well with this Thud pilot. Apparently, he'd been downtown a couple days before, and this was at a time when the B-52s were doing nothing more than bombing trails in the jungle, making toothpicks and killing monkeys. Later on, they got quite involved as the war progressed, but not at this time. And the Thud pilot just didn't have any use for this guy. So this guy walks over to him and says, "Didn't you hear me, Captain or Major, whoever it was?" He said, "I said clear the bar for the combat pilots." And without not so much as blinking an eye, the Thud pilot turned around and cold cocked this colonel. Just knocked him out like the lights in Georgia, I suppose. Anyway, they figured they had to get him off base pretty quick, so I don't know how they shuffled him out, but that was pretty well the essence of the story. And like I said, I called up Sam to ask him if there was any truth to it. He says, "Bobby, I've heard that story too." He says, "I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes for kind of a story of the times during that era." Once again, thanks for stopping in, and we'll talk to you shortly. See ya.